Good evening, class. Today I'm going to talk to you about Nathaniel Greene. That's who I decided to do my final research project on. There were many extraordinary generals that came out of the Revolutionary War, and Nathaniel Greene is one of them. He was interested in military science. He read a lot of books regarding the military, which gave him a advantage over others in strategy and background when fighting. He was self-taught in that matter. Greene became involved in the revolution after he volunteered and joined a militia in Rhode Island known as the Kentish Guards. He then, once Rhode Island formed an official army themselves, he then rose to become general in the. Nathaniel Greene would soon be given a new challenge, and that was head of the Southern U.S. Continental Army. Horatio Gates had not been making progress in defeating the British and running them out of the southern states. And therefore Congress was aggravated, and they looked towards Washington, and Washington thought that there was no one better suited for the job than Nathaniel Greene, because he, after all, had worked under Washington and his strategies, and Greene had the military knowledge and background in order to lead the southern states. However, this would prove to be one of a difficult task. When Greene arrived in Charlotte, North Carolina, James Hall stated that Greene found his army even scantier than he expected. Greene himself stated, "Give scope to your imagination and form as bad a picture as you can draw, and it still will fall short of the state of real things." Greene also wrote Joseph Reed, "The wants of this army are so numerous and various that the shortest way of telling you is to inform you that we have nothing." This was a new challenge that Greene had, was to take this army that was few in number, lacking supplies, adequate clothing they did not have, and to turn them into an army that could fight the British.
Greene realized that the unit lacked discipline. Therefore, that was the first thing that he did, is he brought them together, taught them how to fight together as one unit. He also realized that they needed a food source, adequate shelter, and so that was something else that he reached out. Hayball says Greene worked with local political leaders and militia to help increase local support and build supply lines, improve roads, and build distribution networks in the area. There are three men that were also instrumental in aiding and helping Greene throughout Georgia and South Carolina. They were leaders of guerrilla movements, militias. Francis Marion, Andrew Pickens, and Thomas Sutton are going to be very instrumental in helping Greene learn the land and the terrain that is surrounding him, that he will be commanding the men to fight against the British. The next obstacle that Greene had to overcome was the number of men that he had to work with in his army. He was severely outnumbered by the British troops that were in Georgia and South Carolina. Greene knew that. Therefore, he came up with a unique strategy, and he felt that the strategy to win the South back was going to be in a defensive approach. He was afraid this would not be popular with those in the area, and he would risk losing public support. But Greene felt very strong about the strategy that he had. He wrote Washington saying that he was going to plan to equip a flying army to consist of about 800 horse and 1,000 infantry, with the occasional aid of the militia, would retard British advances into the countryside. He felt very strongly about this.
Greene's going to divide his troops. and relocate them. Greene's going to take a portion of the troops and move them to the Petey River near Chillicothe, South Carolina, and then he's going to send the remaining troops with Daniel Morgan toward Catawba, South Carolina. And the reason that Greene decided to do this, while it was a gamble, was that one, he was hoping to confuse Cornwallis, that Cornwallis wouldn't know what Greene's plan or strategy was. And so Greene was counting that since he would be confused, that Cornwallis's response would be to divide the British. There are several important battles that I want to talk about when you look at the Southern campaign in the Revolutionary War. The first one is the Battle of Cowpens, led by Daniel Morgan on the Patriot side, and Cornwallis sent General Tarleton with the British to defeat Daniel Morgan. However, this happens to be a victory for the Patriots, and it was huge because the Patriots were able to eliminate 86% of the light infantry of the British soldiers. But what made this even more important was Daniel Morgan and the strategy that he used to fight the British. Jason Owen, David Marshall, and Marlard Novasak in their article state that Daniel Morgan in the end developed tactics which made it feasible for the use of combined and regular militia armies in open battle. Morgan set his militia to scouting, skirmishing, and harassing actions which was to commensurate with their equipment and training. And because he combined the forces and used the militia to his advantage, he's going to be successful. This is the first time that we're going to see the militia and the army come together and work efficiently together. And because they were able to accomplish this, this is going to boost the morale of the Patriots in Georgia and South Carolina. And so they're going to gain a new confidence in each other. In fact, this was so successful, and Greene acknowledged what Morgan had accomplished here at the Battle of Cowpens, and therefore throughout the rest of the remaining battles, this is going to be something that is used and Greene pushes to incorporate throughout the rest of the Revolutionary War in the South. Another battle was fought at Guilford Courthouse. Greene was the commanding officer. He and his officers and army, he had brought them up. They had established camp here when they were attacked by Cornwallis and the British army. This was actually a British victory. Greene's going to decide that the army pulls back, the Patriots retreat. But while this was a British victory, there was still a lot of damage that was done to the British army. In fact, the British statesman Charles James Fox exclaimed, "Another such victory would destroy the British army." So the Patriots did have an impact and definitely diluted the British army down. Greene, as far as retreating, that was part of his defensive strategy, was that would fight, they'd do what they needed to do, and then when things were looking like they weren't, they'd pull back and reestablish again. Greene stated that he did not equate retreat with defeat. The most recent British victories also came with the heavy price of losing many British forces. That's Jason Owen in his article quoted. Let's quote from him, and it's quite true, because what Greene's going to do with these losses that were considered British victories is time and time again you're going to see that they retreat out. Well, the British took such loss of soldiers that they're going to pull back, reassemble, and they're actually going to pull out of an area that they had controlled. And so what that does is it allows the Patriots and Greene and his men to move in and to claim that land back. And after the battle at Guilford Courthouse, we're going to see that Cornwallis pulls more of his men out of South Carolina, and that just opens up areas of South Carolina for the Patriots to take back over. There are many other battles that were fought as well, and that the British won. Harvick's Hill, the Siege of 96, Ottawa Springs are just a couple that we could definitely go into detail about. And they weren't battles that were considered victories in the eyes of the Patriot soldiers, because they're going to end up once again pulling back, retreating in order to reform, get a new plan together. But each time you're going to see that the guerrillas, the militia, armies, they all come together with the Continental Army in order to coordinate together and unite to fight the British, which is very important. And besides pulling back, the other thing that Greene's going to focus on is also not only just fighting them, but cutting off the supply sources, the trade lines that the British had, because if they could move that trade in another direction, cut it off, then that would be a way at also beating the British in the South. What's interesting about Greene is that he actually didn't ever win a battle that he was in command of in the South, but he was still successful in pushing and defeating the British out of the South. He's credited with his strategy in wearing down Cornwallis and his troops over time, exhausting them to the point that once they do get up and get near Yorktown, that there's less of them, they're tired, they're out of supplies. Therefore, Cornwallis is going to eventually surrender, which brings an end to the Revolutionary War. Greene was also successful in bringing order back into Georgia and South Carolina, getting a legislature going, enforcing laws and rules to bring the order back into those states. So not only was he a phenomenal military strategist, a leader that helped bring an end to the Revolutionary War, but also went above and beyond to ensure that those southern areas had stability.